Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship moved slowly through empty space near the edge of known territory. The Discovery was one of Earth's newest exploration ships, built to find new worlds and map unknown areas of the galaxy. Jake had been doing this job for 3 years now, and he loved the quiet moments between star systems. The bridge was small but efficient. His crew of 45 worked in shifts to keep the ship running smoothly. Most of them were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. Jake himself had been a Marine before he became an explorer, but those days felt far behind him now. The Discovery carried no weapons except for basic defense systems. Their mission was to explore and learn, not to fight. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at the communication station, monitoring radio signals from nearby space. She was young and eager, fresh out of the academy. Her job was to listen for any signs of intelligent life in the systems they visited. So far, they had found 3 dead worlds and 2 that showed signs of ancient civilizations, but nothing alive. Dr. Lisa Chen worked at the science station next to Amy. Lisa was the ship's chief, scientist and expert on alien life. She had studied every known species in the galaxy and spoke 6 different alien languages. Her dream was to make first contact with a new civilization, something that had not happened in over 50 years. Commander Alex Rodriguez stood near the captain's chair, reviewing their mission reports. Alex was Jake's second in command and his oldest friend. They had served together in the Marines during the resource wars on Earth. Alex handled all the tactical and security matters on the ship, though they rarely had much to worry about in the Outer Rim. The Discovery had been exploring this sector for 2 weeks without finding anything interesting. They were preparing to move to the next system when Amy suddenly sat up straight at her station. She pressed her headphones closer to her ears and began adjusting the controls with quick movements. "Captain," she called out, "I'm picking up something. Strange." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "It's a transmission, sir, but not like anything I've heard before. The frequency is all wrong for human communications, and the signal pattern is completely different." Lisa immediately left her station and joined them. "Can you clean it up, make it clearer?" Amy worked at her controls for several minutes. The signal became stronger and clearer. What they heard made everyone on the bridge stop what they were doing. It was definitely not human, but it sounded desperate. The alien voice spoke in a language none of them recognized, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone was asking for help. "How far away is the signal coming from?" Jake asked. "About 6 light hours, sir. It's coming from the direction of the Kepler system." Jake made a quick decision. "Set course for the source of that signal, maximum speed." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Captain, we don't know what we're flying into. This could be dangerous." "That signal sounds like a distress call to me," Jake replied. "If someone needs help, we need to at least check it out." The Discovery changed course and accelerated toward the signal. As they got closer, Amy was able to pick up more transmissions. The aliens were definitely in trouble. Lisa worked hard to understand their language, using the ship's computer to analyze the patterns in their speech. After 4 hours of travel, they found the source of the signals. 3 alien ships hung in space near a small asteroid field. The ships were badly damaged, with holes in their hulls and their engines barely working. They were clearly refugees running from something terrible. "Captain," Amy said, "I'm receiving a new transmission. Dr. Chen has been working on the translation software, and I think we can understand some of what they're saying." The alien voice came through the speakers, and this time the computer provided a rough translation. The words were choppy and sometimes unclear, but the message was frightening. The aliens called themselves the Kalahari, and they were fleeing from an enemy called the Zephyrian Empire. Their homeworld was under attack, and they were searching for allies to help them fight. Jake felt his old Marine instincts awakening. The Kalahari were describing a military invasion, complete with orbital bombardment and ground assault. Their enemy sounded ruthless and powerful, the kind of force that would destroy entire civilizations for resources and territory. Lisa worked with Amy to establish better communication with the refugee ships. The Kalahari were surprised to encounter humans, as they had never heard of Earth or its people. When they learned that the Discovery was an exploration vessel, they became even more desperate. They begged the humans to carry their message to other species, to find someone willing to help them fight the Zephyrians. The Kalahari leader, who called himself Vextai, explained their situation through the translation system. His people were scholars and engineers, not warriors. They had lived in peace for hundreds of years and had no experience with real warfare. The Zephyrian Empire had appeared at their borders 6 months ago and demanded their surrender. When the Kalahari refused, the enemy began systematically destroying their worlds. Alex studied the tactical information the Kalahari provided. The Zephyrian fleet was massive, with over 300 warships advancing on the Kalahari homeworld of Kalos Prime. They used overwhelming force to crush resistance quickly, leaving no survivors among military targets. Other species in the galaxy had refused to help the Kalahari, saying the fight was hopeless. Jake made another decision that would change everything. Tell them we'll escort them back to their homeworld. We need to see this situation for ourselves. Alex looked concerned. Captain, we're just an exploration ship. We can't fight a war. We're not going to fight, Jake said. We're going to assess the situation and report back to Earth Command. If there's a military threat expanding in this direction, Earth needs to know about it. Lisa continued talking with the Kalahari, learning more about their culture and the enemy they faced. The refugees were grateful for any help, even from strangers. They had lost hope of finding allies among the established galactic powers. The small convoy of ships began the journey to Kalos Prime. During the trip, Jake sent detailed reports back to Earth through quantum communication. He described the Kalahari refugees, the approaching Zephyrian threat, and his decision to investigate further. He requested that Earth Command consider the strategic implications of an expanding enemy empire near human space. As they traveled through hyperspace, Jake thought about what they might find at Kalos Prime. The Kalahari had painted a picture of a civilization facing extinction, while their enemies sounded like the worst kind of military conquerors. His marine training told him that someone had to stand up to bullies, but his explorer's caution warned him that Earth might not be ready for an interstellar war. The journey to Kalos Prime would take 3 days. During that time, the fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance, waiting to see if the warriors of Earth would answer a desperate call for help. The convoy dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kalos system, and Jake Morrison felt his heart sink at what he saw. The Kalahari homeworld hung in space like a wounded animal, surrounded by the debris of destroyed orbital stations and dead ships. Smoke clouds drifted in the upper atmosphere where cities had been bombed from space. This was not a world preparing for war. It was a world already dying. The Discovery followed the Kalahari refugee ships toward the planet. As they got closer, Jake could see the desperate preparations happening on the surface. The aliens were trying to build defenses, but their efforts looked pathetic compared to what was coming for them. Small ships moved supplies between the remaining orbital platforms, while construction crews worked frantically to build weapon emplacements that would never be enough. Commander Alex Rodriguez stood beside Jake on the bridge, studying the tactical displays. His face was grim as he analyzed the defensive positions. Captain, this is hopeless. They have maybe 50 combat-capable ships and some orbital guns. From what the refugees told us, the Zephyrians are bringing 300 warships. Doctor, Lisa Chen was busy communicating with the planet's surface, establishing contact with the Kalahari government. The aliens were surprised to see humans, but they welcomed any potential allies with desperate gratitude. Within hours, they received an invitation to meet with the Kalahari leadership on the planet's surface. The shuttle ride down to Kalos Prime gave Jake his first close look at the Kalahari people. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Their cities were beautiful, full of elegant spires and flowing architecture that spoke of a peaceful culture dedicated to learning and art. It made what was about to happen to them even more tragic. Prime Minister Yolandra met them at the landing platform. She was old even by Kalahari standards, with silver markings on her skin that indicated high rank in their society. Through Lisa's translation, she explained the situation to the human visitors. The Zephyrian Empire had given them one final ultimatum: surrender in 10 days or face complete destruction. Jake listened to her story and felt his anger growing. The Zephyrians were classic bullies, using overwhelming force to terrorize civilizations into submission. They stripped conquered worlds of all resources and enslaved the populations. Those who resisted were simply wiped out as examples to others. Alex gathered intelligence about the enemy from Kalahari military files. What he learned made him even more concerned. The Zephyrians had perfected a doctrine of rapid conquest using massive fleets and brutal tactics. They would bombard a world from orbit until all defenses were destroyed, then land ground forces to eliminate any remaining resistance. The process usually took less than a week. The Zephyrian military was built around overwhelming numerical superiority and shock tactics. Their ships were heavily armed and armored, designed to absorb damage while dealing out destruction. Their ground forces used chemical weapons and biological agents to clear areas before occupation. They showed no mercy to civilians and took no prisoners among military personnel. Lisa spent time studying the Kalahari themselves, trying to understand why other galactic species had refused to help them. What she discovered explained a lot about the situation. The Kalahari had evolved on a low-gravity world with few natural predators. They were physically fragile compared to most species, with bones that broke easily and muscles that tired quickly. Their culture reflected their peaceful evolution. The Kalahari had not fought a real war in over 500 years. Their military consisted mainly of patrol ships and orbital defense platforms designed to deal with pirates and asteroid impacts, not invasion fleets. They had brilliant scientists and engineers, but no generals or tactical experts. The other galactic species saw the Kalahari as doomed from the start. Why risk war with the Zephyrian Empire to save a people who could not defend themselves? It was cold political calculation, the kind that left peaceful civilizations to die alone. Jake sent detailed reports back to Earth Command, describing the situation and requesting immediate military assistance. He knew it was beyond his authority as an exploration captain, but someone had to speak for the Kalahari. He included Alex's tactical analysis and Lisa's cultural studies, painting a complete picture of what Earth would be facing if they chose to intervene. 2 days later, reinforcements arrived from Earth. General Nathan Hayes brought a small fleet of human warships and 3,000 colonial marines. Jake had served under Hayes during the Resource Wars and knew him as a brilliant tactical commander who never backed down from a fight. Hayes arrived aboard the heavy cruiser UES Valiant, followed by 6 destroyers and 4 transport ships. The human fleet was tiny compared to what the Zephyrians were bringing, but Jake felt better just seeing Earth's flag flying in Kalahari space. The general met with Jake and the Kalahari leadership to assess the situation. Hayes was a big man with gray hair and hard eyes that had seen too many battlefields. He listened carefully to the tactical briefings and studied the intelligence about Zephyrian capabilities. His questions were sharp and professional, focused on finding weaknesses in the enemy's approach. Hayes walked through the Kalahari defenses with Alex, examining their weapons and fortifications. What he saw did not impress him. The alien technology was advanced in some areas but completely inadequate for military purposes. Their energy weapons were designed for precision work, not destroying enemy ships. Their armor was light and flexible, meant for comfort rather than protection. The Kalahari military leaders were scholars trying to play at being soldiers. They had read about warfare in books, but had never experienced the reality of combat. Their battle plans were textbook perfect, but completely impractical for real fighting. They talked about honor and following proper procedures while their enemy was preparing to slaughter them without mercy. General Hayes met privately with Jake and Alex to discuss Earth's options. The political situation was complicated, as Earth had no formal alliance with the Kalahari and no legal authority to wage war in this part of the galaxy. However, the Zephyrian Empire represented a clear threat to human expansion and security. "The way I see it," Hayes said, "we have 2 choices. We can evacuate as many Kalahari as possible and let their homeworld fall, or we can make a stand here and show the galaxy that some fights are worth having." Alex raised the obvious concern. General, we're outnumbered 10 to 1. Even with our technological advantages, those are bad odds. Hayes smiled grimly. Son, you're thinking like a civilized person. The Zephyrians have been fighting civilized enemies who follow rules and surrender when things get hopeless. They've never faced humans in a real fight. Jake understood what the general meant. Humans had evolved differently from most galactic species. Earth was a harsh world that bred warriors, not scholars. Human history was one long story of conflict and survival against impossible odds. Where other species saw hopeless situations, humans saw challenges to overcome. The general made his decision and sent a message back to Earth Command requesting emergency authorization for military intervention. He cited the threat to human interests and the need to establish Earth's reputation in galactic affairs. While he waited for a response, he began preparing defensive positions around Kalos Prime. The Kalahari watched in amazement as human marines began setting up weapons and fortifications. The humans worked with grim efficiency, transforming peaceful areas into killing fields. They studied the terrain with the eyes of predators, finding advantages that the aliens had never considered. General Hayes knew they could not win a conventional battle against the Zephyrian fleet. However, he also knew that humans had never been particularly interested in fighting conventional battles. The key was to make the enemy pay such a high price for victory that they would think twice about expanding further into this region of space. As the deadline approached, Hayes received his authorization from Earth Command. He was given broad discretionary powers to protect human interests and establish Earth's presence in the sector. The message was clear. Earth was ready to fight if necessary. The general called together his officers and the Kalahari leadership for a final briefing. In 3 days, the Zephyrian fleet would arrive at Kalos Prime. When they did, they would discover that their next victims had found some very dangerous allies. More ships arrived from Earth every few hours, each one bringing weapons and soldiers that amazed the watching Kalahari. Colonel Diana Foster led the 2nd Colonial Marine Regiment aboard 3 transport ships, her troops moving with a deadly efficiency that made the peaceful aliens nervous. Captain Kyle Baker commanded the stealth destroyer UES Phantom, a ship so advanced that Kalahari sensors could barely detect it even when it was right in front of them. Dr. Lisa Chen continued her research into why humans were so different from other galactic species. What she discovered changed everything the Kalahari thought they knew about their new allies. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy. Most intelligent life evolved on peaceful worlds, with stable climates and few natural dangers. Lisa explained her findings to Prime Minister Yelandra during one of their daily meetings. "Your world is beautiful and safe," she said through the translation system. "Your people evolved in harmony with nature, learning to build and create without violence. Earth was different. Our planet tried to kill us every single day," the Kalahari leader listened with growing amazement as Lisa described Earth's environment. Violent weather that could destroy entire cities in hours. Earthquakes that split the ground open without warning. Volcanoes that buried whole regions under ash and lava. Predators that hunted humans for food, forcing them to develop weapons and tactics just to survive. "But that is only the beginning," Lisa continued. "Humans also fought each other constantly. We had wars that lasted for decades, killing millions of people. We developed new ways to destroy our enemies faster and more completely. Every human child grows up learning about strategy and conflict, even if they never planned to be soldiers." General Hayes met with the Kalahari military leaders to explain human warfare concepts that they had never encountered. The aliens understood the basic theory of combat, but they had no experience with the psychological and cultural aspects that made humans so dangerous. Their textbooks taught them about honor and following rules, while human doctrine focused on winning at any cost. "War is not a game with rules," Hayes told them. "It is survival of the strongest and smartest. The Zephyrians understand this better than you do, which is why they have conquered so many worlds. But they have never faced an enemy that grew up fighting for survival every single day." Commander Alex Rodriguez worked with Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks, Earth's naval intelligence officer, to analyze Zephyrian tactics and find weaknesses. Brooks had studied every available report about enemy operations, looking for patterns and vulnerabilities that could be exploited. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The Zephyrians were incredibly effective against conventional enemies who fought by established galactic rules. They used overwhelming force and fear tactics to break enemy morale quickly. Their commanders expected enemies to surrender when faced with impossible odds, as civilized species usually did. However, their doctrine had never been tested against an opponent who refused to follow those rules. Humans had developed tactics over thousands of years of warfare that other species considered insane or impossible. Suicide attacks, fighting to the death when surrender was logical, using weapons so dangerous that they threatened the users as much as the enemy. Colonel Foster briefed her Marines on the enemy they would be facing. Her troops were veterans of conflicts across human space, experienced in fighting on hostile worlds against dangerous opponents, but even they were impressed by the Zephyrian reputation for brutality and overwhelming force. "They expect us to break and run when things get tough," Foster told her battalion commanders. "They have never fought humans who consider certain death just another tactical challenge. We are going to teach them what happens when Death Worlders get angry." The Marines began preparing the surface of Kalos Prime for urban warfare. They studied the elegant Kalahari cities and turned them into killing fields, placing explosives and ambush positions that would turn every street into a death trap. The peaceful aliens watched in horror as their beautiful world was transformed into a fortress. Captain Baker took the UES Phantom on reconnaissance missions to study the approaching Zephyrian fleet. His stealth ship could move unseen through enemy formations, gathering intelligence about their numbers and capabilities. What he reported back confirmed everyone's worst fears about the size of the enemy force. The Zephyrian fleet consisted of over 300 ships, including massive dreadnoughts that could destroy a city with a single bombardment. Their escorts were fast and heavily armed, designed to sweep aside defending forces quickly. At the center of the formation was the command ship of Warcast Jektar, the Zephyrian leader, who had personally conquered 12 worlds. Dr. Chen made another disturbing discovery about human nature that explained why other species feared them. Human entertainment celebrated violence and conflict in ways that shocked peaceful civilizations. Human children played games that simulated warfare and watched stories about heroes who never surrendered against impossible odds. "Your people find violence exciting," Prime Minister Yolandra said with confusion. "You create art and stories about destruction and death. How can you enjoy such terrible things?" Lisa tried to explain concepts that had no equivalent in Kalahari culture. Humans admired courage and determination in the face of danger. They told stories about underdogs who refused to give up, even when victory seemed impossible. Human heroes were not scholars or artists, but warriors who protected others through strength and sacrifice. The cultural differences went deeper than anyone had realized. Where the Kalahari saw tragedy and senseless destruction, humans saw glory and honor. Where the aliens looked for compromise and peaceful solutions, humans prepared for total war. The two species were so different that they might as well have evolved on separate universes. General Hayes received updates from Earth Command about additional reinforcements being prepared. Admiral Patricia Stone was assembling a task force around the dreadnought UES Leviathan, but it would take weeks to arrive. Hayes would have to hold Kalos Prime with what he had until help could reach them. The Zephyrian advance scouts appeared at the edge of the system, preparing the way for the main fleet. Captain Baker shadowed them with the Phantom, gathering final intelligence about enemy intentions. The scouts were confident and casual, treating the upcoming battle as a routine conquest against another helpless civilization. Warcast Jektar sent the traditional surrender demand to Kalos Prime, expecting the same swift capitulation he had received from dozens of other worlds. His message was broadcast across all communication channels, demanding immediate submission or complete destruction. The terms were harsh and final, offering slavery as the only alternative to death. General Hayes composed his response carefully, knowing that it would be the first official communication between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. His message was short and direct, translating roughly as "come and take it" in the enemy language. The phrase had historical significance among humans, representing defiance against overwhelming odds. The Kalahari leadership was shocked by the human response. They had expected some attempt at negotiation or compromise, perhaps an offer to evacuate their people in exchange for peaceful withdrawal. Instead, the humans had essentially declared war against an enemy that had never been defeated. Prime Minister Yalandra met with Hayes one final time before the battle began. She needed to understand why the humans were willing to risk everything for people they had just met. The general's answer revealed something fundamental about human nature that the Kalahari had never encountered. Because someone asked for help, Hayes said simply. And that is what humans do. The Zephyrian main fleet dropped out of hyperspace, at the edge of the Kalos system, their massive ships blocking out the stars. Warcast Ejectar expected to see a broken civilization ready to surrender. Instead, he found human warships waiting in defensive formation, their crews prepared for a fight that would shock the galaxy. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and it would start with a battle that no one would ever forget. The Zephyrian fleet advanced on Kalos Prime with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Warcast Ejectar had conquered 12 worlds using the same tactics, and he saw no reason why this battle would be any different. His 300 ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready to deliver the overwhelming firepower that had broken every enemy he had ever faced. What happened next defied everything the Zephyrians understood about warfare. Instead of waiting to be destroyed, the human ships attacked. Captain Kyle Baker's UES Phantom appeared behind the enemy formation like a ghost, its stealth systems allowing it to strike without warning. The destroyer launched a spread of torpedoes at a Zephyrian supply ship, turning it into an expanding ball of fire and debris. The enemy fleet tried to respond to the attack, but the Phantom had already vanished back into the darkness of space. Their sensors could not track the human stealth ship, leaving them shooting at shadows while Baker positioned himself for another strike. This was not how civilized species fought wars, hiding and striking like cowards instead of meeting their enemies in honorable battle. General Hayes coordinated the defense from his command center on Kalos Prime, watching the tactical displays as his outnumbered ships engaged the enemy fleet. The human strategy was simple and brutal: strike hard and fast, then disappear before the enemy could respond. Every human ship was faster and more maneuverable than their Zephyrian counterparts, allowing them to choose when and where to fight. Captain Jake Morrison led a squadron of Kalahari ships that had been hastily equipped with human weapons and tactics. The Discovery was no longer an exploration vessel but a combat ship, its scientific equipment replaced with missile launchers and beam weapons. Morrison's marine training served him well as he taught the Kalahari crews how to fight like humans, instead of following their outdated textbook procedures. The first major engagement occurred near Kalos Prime's largest moon, where Zephyrian shock troops attempted to establish a landing zone. Colonel Diana Foster was waiting for them with her Marines, having turned the moon's mining tunnels into a maze of death traps and ambush positions. The enemy had never fought humans before, and they were not prepared for what they encountered. Major Sam Williams led the 3rd Battalion in the defense of the mining complex, his troops moving through the underground tunnels with deadly efficiency. The Marines had rigged explosives throughout the facility, turning every corridor into a potential killing field. When the Zephyrian troops entered the tunnels, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare of improvised warfare. The enemy soldiers were larger and stronger than humans, with thick armor and powerful energy weapons. However, they had no experience fighting in confined spaces against opponents who treated close-quarters combat as an art form. The Marines used grenades, explosives, and hand-to-hand fighting techniques that turned the tunnels into slaughterhouses. Williams coordinated his troops through encrypted communications, moving them like pieces on a chessboard to trap and destroy enemy formations. The Zephyrians had expected to overwhelm the defenders with superior firepower, but they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to enjoy the chaos of battle. Every time they cleared a tunnel, more humans appeared from hidden positions to attack their flanks. The psychological impact of human tactics was devastating to enemy morale. Zephyrian soldiers were trained to fight conventional battles against enemies who followed established rules of warfare. They were not prepared to face opponents who used suicide attacks, booby traps, and weapons that were almost as dangerous to the users as to the targets. Lieutenant Susan Clark led a zero-gravity assault team against a Zephyrian command ship, using magnetic boots and cutting torches to breach the enemy hull. Her Marines fought their way through the ship's corridors, clearing each compartment with the methodical brutality that characterized human combat operations. The alien crew had never fought boarding actions before, and were paralyzed by the savage efficiency of the human attack. Commander Tony Rodriguez coordinated drone swarms against the enemy fleet, using unmanned fighters programmed with kamikaze protocols that shocked the Zephyrian commanders. The drones would ram into enemy ships at maximum speed, their nuclear warheads detonating on impact. It was a tactic that no civilized species would consider, trading expensive equipment for enemy lives without hesitation. Warcast Jektar watched, his carefully planned invasion falling apart as human tactics proved devastatingly effective. His troops were dying in the tunnels of the moon. His ships were being picked off by invisible attackers, and his crews were demoralized by fighting methods they had never imagined. These humans fought like demons, showing no fear of death and no respect for the established rules of galactic warfare. The Zephyrian commander made a fatal decision, ordering the bombardment of civilian areas on Kalos Prime to force the humans to surrender. He had used this tactic successfully on other worlds, threatening innocent lives to break enemy resistance. What he did not understand was that threatening civilians would only make the humans fight harder. General Hayes authorized the use of weapons that other species considered too dangerous to deploy. Human nuclear missiles streaked through space toward the Zephyrian fleet, their warheads powerful enough to vaporize entire ships. The enemy had shields and armor designed to stop conventional weapons, but they had never faced nuclear fire delivered with human precision and determination. The battle for Kalos Prime became a demonstration of what happened when a peaceful civilization found protectors who understood the true nature of warfare. The Kalahari watched in amazement and horror as their human allies fought with a ferocity that seemed impossible for any civilized species to possess. Captain Baker's Phantom continued its campaign of terror against the enemy supply lines, appearing, without warning, to destroy fuel tankers and ammunition ships. The Zephyrian fleet began to experience shortages as their logistics network collapsed under the relentless human attacks. Baker's crew had turned stealth warfare into a deadly game, striking at will and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Colonel Foster's Marines on the moon had turned the mining complex into a fortress that consumed enemy troops like a hungry beast. The Zephyrians threw wave after wave of soldiers into the tunnels, only to have them disappear into the maze of explosives and ambush positions. Major Williams reported that his Marines were running low on ammunition, but had eliminated over 3,000 enemy troops. The space battle around Kalos Prime reached its climax when reinforcements arrived from Earth. Admiral Patricia Stone brought the full might of the human defense fleet, including the massive dreadnought UES Leviathan. The sight of human capital ships designed purely for destruction caused panic throughout the Zephyrian ranks. The Leviathan was larger than any ship in the enemy fleet, its weapons capable of destroying multiple targets with each shot. Admiral Stone had built her reputation fighting pirates and rebels in the Outer Rim, but this was her first chance to face a major enemy fleet in open battle. Her crews were eager to show the galaxy what Earth's finest warships could accomplish. Warcast. Jektar realized that his invasion had become a disaster. His supposedly overwhelming force was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow any civilized rules of combat. The humans fought like wild animals, using tactics that no sane species would consider. They seemed to view warfare not as a necessary evil, but as a challenge to be overcome through strength and determination. The Zephyrian retreat began as individual ships fled the battle, their crews unwilling to continue fighting an enemy that showed no mercy and no fear. The organized formations that had conquered 12 worlds dissolved into chaos as human ships pursued the fleeing vessels with relentless determination. Admiral Stone's fleet swept through the enemy formation like a hurricane, destroying everything in their path. The Leviathan's main guns could penetrate any Zephyrian shield, while her escort ships moved with the deadly grace of apex predators. The humans had turned space combat into an art form that combined raw power with tactical brilliance. The battle ended when Warcast Jektar's command ship exploded under concentrated human fire. The remaining Zephyrian vessels fled the system, in complete disorder, carrying news of their defeat back to their empire. For the first time in their history, the unstoppable conquerors had been stopped by an enemy they had never expected to encounter. The cost of victory was written across the surface of Kalos Prime and the space around it. Entire sections of the planet bore the scars of orbital bombardment, while the debris of destroyed ships drifted through the system like a metal graveyard. The humans had saved the Kalahari civilization, but the price of that salvation would be remembered for generations. The aftermath of the battle left Kalos Prime forever changed. Prime Minister Yelandra walked through the ruins of her capital city, seeing the scars that human protection had left on her beautiful world. Buildings lay in rubble where Zephyrian bombardment had targeted civilian areas, while the elegant spires of Kalahari architecture stood broken against the sky. The humans had saved her people, but the cost of salvation was almost too terrible to comprehend. General Nathan Hayes met with the surviving Zephyrian commanders under a flag of truce, establishing the terms that would end the conflict. The enemy officers were shocked to find themselves negotiating with aliens who had destroyed their seemingly invincible fleet. Warcast Jektar was dead, killed when his command ship exploded under human fire, leaving his subordinates to face the consequences of their failed invasion. The human terms were harsh but simple: complete withdrawal from Kalahari space within 30 days, reparations for the damage caused to Kalos Prime, and a formal agreement never to threaten the Kalahari Republic again. The Zephyrian officers protested that their empire would never accept such conditions, but Hayes made it clear that they had no choice in the matter. Your fleet is destroyed, your troops are dead or captured, and your reputation for invincibility is broken. Hayes told them through Dr. Lisa Chen's translation system. You can accept our terms and leave with the ships you have left, or you can try to continue this war and face the full power of Earth's military. Admiral Patricia Stone reinforced the general's words by demonstrating the capabilities of the Joyce Leviathan. The massive dreadnought's main guns fired a single shot into an abandoned Zephyrian ship, vaporizing the vessel completely. The display of power was designed to show the enemy commanders what would happen if they chose to continue fighting, instead of negotiating. The Zephyrian withdrawal began immediately, their remaining ships limping out of the Kalos system under the watchful eyes of human patrols. Captain Kyle Baker's UES Phantom shadowed the retreating fleet to ensure they kept their word, while other human ships began the process of clearing debris from the space around Kalos Prime. Dr. Chen worked to establish permanent diplomatic relations between Earth and the Kalahari Republic, creating the foundation for a formal alliance that would reshape galactic politics. The negotiations were complicated by the vast cultural differences between the two species, but both sides recognized the benefits of cooperation. The Kalahari offered their advanced scientific knowledge and peaceful philosophy in exchange for human military protection. Their technology was sophisticated in areas that humans had never explored, particularly in fields like energy manipulation and material science. The combination of Kalahari innovation and human determination promised to accelerate the development of both civilizations. However, the partnership came with serious complications that neither side had fully anticipated. The Kalahari leadership struggled to understand human military culture and the casual acceptance of violence that seemed to pervade every aspect of Earth society. Prime Minister Yelandra found it disturbing that human children played games simulating warfare and that human entertainment celebrated conflict and destruction. How can you build a peaceful civilization when your people are raised to think about violence and conquest? She asked Hayes during one of their diplomatic meetings. Your soldiers seem to enjoy fighting, as if war were some kind of sport or entertainment. Hayes tried to explain concepts that had no equivalent in Kalahari culture. Humans had learned through thousands of years of conflict that the willingness to fight was the best way to preserve peace. Strong militaries prevented wars by deterring potential aggressors, while weak ones invited attack from those who saw easy prey. We do not fight because we love violence, Hayes said. We fight because someone has to stand up to bullies and protect those who cannot protect themselves. Your people called for help and we answered. That is what humans do. Word of the human victory spread throughout the galaxy with shocking speed. Other civilizations that had refused to help the Kalahari began sending diplomatic missions to Earth, seeking their own protection agreements with the mysterious Deathworlders who had defeated the Zephyrian Empire. The balance of galactic power had shifted overnight. Captain Jake Morrison found himself promoted to Admiral and placed in command of Earth's new exploration and defense fleet. His mission was to establish human presence throughout the region, while protecting allied civilizations from future threats. The Discovery was refitted as a command ship, its scientific equipment balanced with the weapons and sensors needed for military operations. Colonel Diana Foster received command of the newly formed Kalahari Defense Corps, a joint military organization that would train Kalahari personnel in human combat techniques. The program faced enormous challenges as the peaceful aliens struggled to adapt to the brutal realities of modern warfare. However, Foster was determined to give them the tools they needed to defend themselves. Major Sam Williams became a legend among human military circles for his defense of the mining complex on Callus Prime's moon. His tactics were studied at military academies across human space, providing valuable lessons about fighting in confined spaces against numerically superior enemies. The tunnels where his Marines had made their stand became a shrine to human determination and sacrifice. The political implications of the battle extended far beyond the immediate military victory. Earth had announced its presence on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible, demonstrating that humans were willing and able to project military power across interstellar distances. Other species began to recalculate their strategic positions based on this new reality. The Zephyrian Empire found itself facing a crisis that threatened its very existence. For generations, they had relied on fear and overwhelming force to maintain control over their territory. The defeat at Callus Prime had shattered that reputation, encouraging rebellion among their subject worlds and hesitation among their military commanders. Reports reached Earth that several Zephyrian worlds had declared independence following news of the defeat. Other species that had been terrorized into submission were beginning to resist Zephyrian demands, knowing that the seemingly invincible empire could be beaten. The humans had not just won a single battle, they had sparked a galactic revolution. Prime Minister Ylandra struggled with the moral implications of her people's salvation. The humans had saved the Kalahari from extinction, but their methods had left her deeply troubled. Cities lay in ruins, thousands of Zephyrian soldiers were dead, and her beautiful world bore the scars of a conflict that seemed to contradict everything the Kalahari believed about civilization and progress. Dr. Chen spent considerable time helping the Kalahari leadership understand the necessity of what had happened. War is never beautiful, she explained. It is always destructive and tragic. But sometimes it is the only way to stop something even worse from happening. Without human intervention, your entire species would have been enslaved or destroyed. The Mao establishment of human military bases on Callus Prime created additional tensions within Kalahari society. The Marines brought their own culture and customs, which often clashed with local sensibilities. Human soldiers trained constantly for combat, maintained weapons that could level buildings, and showed a casual attitude toward violence that made the peaceful aliens nervous. General Hayes worked to minimize these cultural conflicts while maintaining the security arrangements that protected the Kalahari Republic. Human forces were concentrated in specific areas away from major population centers, with strict protocols governing interaction between human personnel and Kalahari civilians. The long-term consequences of first contact became apparent as other species throughout the galaxy began approaching Earth with requests for protection or alliance. Some came seeking military assistance against their own enemies, while others wanted access to human technology and tactical expertise. Earth found itself in the position of galactic protector, a role that carried enormous responsibilities and dangers. Admiral Stone established the Strategic Defense Command to coordinate Earth's expanding military commitments throughout the region. Her fleet grew rapidly as new ships arrived from human shipyards, while Marine units deployed to protect allied worlds from potential threats. The humans were building an empire based on military protection rather than conquest. The story of the Battle of Callus Prime became legend throughout human space, inspiring a new generation of explorers and soldiers who wanted to follow in the footsteps of Morrison and his crew. Military recruitment reached record levels as young humans sought to join the forces that had shocked the galaxy with their courage and determination. The final chapter of the immediate crisis came when Hayes met with the remaining Zephyrian commanders for the last time. The enemy officers were preparing to return to their empire with news of their defeat and the terms of their withdrawal. Their faces showed the shock and confusion of soldiers who had never imagined that their unstoppable war machine could be broken. "Why did you fight so hard for strangers?" asked the senior Zephyrian officer through the translation system. "The Kalahari are not even your species."